Excellent. Well, welcome to our podcast slash videocast, video, whatever we want to call it here. I've got Bill Flanagan here from Mr. HUSO. And so if you're new to this, HUSO is this fabulous sound frequency therapy machine. I would, Bill, just tell you very briefly how I got all started with this. Kind of my background is I'm a holistic stress coach. I've been in the holistic health field for about 24 years, doing coaching for people energetically for the past 10, 12 years. I do a lot of training for other practitioners as well, all over the world, and count myself lucky to do that. So I'm very familiar with what frequencies and energies and how quick they can shift things for people, and tend to work with a lot of people who are like the worst possible scenarios you can imagine in life. People are like, okay, this just happened to me, fix me, right? So, and I enjoy doing it. But one day I had just finished a session for a client of mine. Her husband died young of an aneurysm, leaving her with 4 children. One quite severe autistic girl who's always biting herself, always having total freakouts, endangering herself. Another daughter of hers who, let's just say it mildly, she has had some attitude issues and is off at boarding school for girls with attitude issues, if you know what I'm saying. And so mom's life is constant PTSD, almost always, And I just finished a session with her, and I saw this ad pop up for the HUSO, and I looked at it, and something inside me went ding, 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 and I'm like, if that actually does do what it says it does, it's some freaky cool thing. And I sent I was like, I know who will buy that. The client I just did it with. So I sent her the thing, and she bought it immediately. And she got it pretty quickly. And all she did when she got it, she used it once, and she sent me a message. And the message says, just got my HUSO. Boom. Halfway through organizing my garage, my daughter's not biting herself anymore. My cousin, who is bipolar, used it once and said, hey, I think I'm more connected to reality after using a machine. And I'm like, well, okay. So what's your elevator speech? Like, people go, what is this machine? And you got 5 floors and an elevator to explain to them. What do you tell people? What the heck is this thing?
Well, HUSO is sound therapy based in human sound. That's what HUSO stands for, human sound. We use the human voice as a carrier of our frequency. And we then create an oscillating waveform that can bring a person from a sympathetic fight or flight state to a parasympathetic state, where the body is able to better recover, relax, you get better sleep. The body can do what it needs to do naturally to balance. Frequency is, the human voice is a great carrier frequency. I can say one word to you, and that word, you can tell if I'm happy, sad, amorous. There's so much harmonics and vocal inside the range of hertz range of a human voice that we respond to really well as human beings, just from our evolution. So in our minds, the creator of HUSO was a sound therapist that's had over 45 years doing sound therapy with her voice. The idea was, okay, let's get, Lily is her name. Let's try to, basically put her in a box and see how to do that.
Yeah.
And that was quite complicated. HUSO looks like a pretty simple machine, but it's actually a lot more to it, both in the tones and in the technology.
It's very interesting, but after using it for a while, I'm like, okay, this is not simple. It works, but there's some real thought going into it. But yeah, so how did you personally get involved? What's your background? Because I heard you on a podcast a bit, and it sounds like you're kind of uniquely suited to do something like this,
Absolutely, yeah. I'm finding it more and more. So I come from a Oriental medicine, acupuncture background. I worked for many years in Southern California at the University of California, Irvine, doing research and clinical trials. I also had a private practice there. I traveled a lot in Southeast Asia. I did study acupuncture in Santa Monica at Emperor's College and Wilshire Boulevard. was fortunate really is when I graduated in early 2000 to get involved with the Samueli Center, which was a Center for Integrated Medicine at the University of California, Irvine. I became their first acupuncturist essentially, and became an assistant professor in the Department of Cardiology at the University of California, Irvine, which was at the time quite unheard of for acupuncture. Yeah. And one of the things that we did with the kind of the basis of the Samueli Center was to integrate more alternative integrated medicine into Western medical protocols. So we would look at things like acupuncture and do functional MRIs with acupuncture, seeing how we could do things like reduce hypertension, or, how could you, basically introduce an acupuncture protocol and an idiopathic hypertension, bring a patient, less reliant on their blood pressure medications, which have terrible side effects.
So kind of quantifying a lot of the Eastern medicine stuff with cool technology. Love it.
Exactly. For the ultimate benefit of patients. And, a lot of this is what we do is, in what considered alternative medicine. I mean, Chinese medicine is an ancient, it's been around for, thousands of years, and they've been great results, especially for chronic conditions. Western medicine had its origins in the battlefield, and Chinese medicine had its origins out as really a farmer's medicine. So, for chronic pain and gastrointestinal issues, and they're just really strong. Whereas Western medicine, it's no better place to be if you have a heart attack or or something like that. You want to be in a Western hospital.
I love that analogy, by the way, that it had its origins in the battlefield. That makes total sense. I've never heard that before, but that's awesome. Yeah.
And it's good at that. If you're in an automobile accident, you want to be there. But for more chronic conditions, it's, it's using a chainsaw where you maybe need a small little.
I mean, you need only look at, the statistics that we spend more money in this country than anyone else. But, the World Health Organization rates us pretty poorly in terms of actual health and benefits. Like there's
for sure,
there's something wrong on a return on investment going on here, big time,
Yeah, that's one of the things that we have. I fast forward to my kind of current. I was in France. I basically we took a sabbatical to move to France for a year, and we ended up staying for 8. Nice. So that was we were down near Marseille in this little village, and part of what I was doing when I was over in France, I couldn't practice acupuncture. So I started looking into different modalities and therapies and things like that. And sound was right up there. I'd always been interested in sound. When I was younger, I'd taken a trek to through Nepal, especially to the monasteries, right at the base camp of Everest and that Sagarmatha Park. It's right at the border of Tibet. And just saw the things that, in those monasteries, what they were doing with sounds and their horns and some of the chants and things like that. Yeah. It was just really powerful experience for me. So, I had a basis and knew that sound was a very powerful medium, and that, humans, especially me, just even personally responded really well to that. So I was in contact in France with the people as they were developing HUSO. So I had a personal relationship, and we were talking about it. And I really liked the fact that they were incorporating some of the things that I knew about acupuncture, but using sound in that as well. So when we started to think about coming back to the US. I have 3 boys, and the oldest now is on a scholarship, doing a cycling scholarship here in North Carolina.
Oh, fun.
We were like, are we going to be in Europe and have the kids, in the US? And so, started, exploring like ways to come back, and this position opened up with HUSO, which was just, amazing. And I'd seen the technology.
What exactly is your position with HUSO?
Currently I'm the CEO now.
Okay.
So, okay. I started as a senior executive, and, quickly became kind of in my wheelhouse to really not only implement HUSO in the field, but also, help to grow the company.
Yeah.
So, and that's working really. It's a lot of work,
Sure.
Going from but we're a growing company. Our sales, double pretty much every 3 to 4 months. So at this point, we're doing well. We're obviously helping people, which is a great thing. I'm really just amazed at what I continue to see in the field, working with sound, with both the home unit and the professional unit, of what kind of results I can get. I can do, a lot of things that I was able to do with acupuncture with just sound, which makes sense. I mean, sound is, we're 60, 70% water. Sound travels really well in that medium. It's better than light as far as the depth that it can penetrate. And it's really holding that oscillating waveform intact. So you're getting a direct delivery of that message, and what we're doing is we're doing a little bit more than this, but in a simplified version through pads on the wrists and ankles and headphones, we're delivering this oscillating waveform, and it's triggering the vagus nerve, which is then able to bring someone back from a sympathetic fight or flight state to a more parasympathetic state where they're able to relax better. Their body then is able to naturally start kicking in its healing processes. So, to get a body in balance and get adequate rest, I mean, that's one of just a huge thing in also how they're going to respond to other modalities of treatment. As a holistic practitioner, you don't just look for one thing. You're looking for, a host of things that can all work together. And
absolutely. That's one reason why I've been so encouraging my clients to get the machine, because, I find that I'll do sessions with clients, and first thing we'll have to do is trying to bring their nervous system back in order, and then we can work on more significant things, right? But, I've noticed some of my clients who've got the machine, and typically, first part of the session, I kind of go through and muscle test different areas, and they're all out of whack. I'm like, okay, let's put you back together. And I'm used to them being that way, right? Because they're slightly drama driven, right? But when one of them got the machine and then I did it for them, I'm like, oh, well, look, all these, you're much better starting place. And for me, that's nice, because then I don't have to keep on doing cleanup for the person, right? I can go, okay, you're good. Let's work on more significant things instead of just having to patch you back up over and over and over again. So for me, that's what I'm seeing a lot of for people, is just if they're more relaxed. It's like if they're not in fight or flight and freaked out about everything, it's like everything works better, like dramatically, and makes my job much easier for people, for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's what we're seeing. I just came back from working with athletes. These are Olympic, hopefuls and track and field athletes, and in Dallas for about 3 days. And I mean, athletes are really good. Just like, I mean, athletes are normal people, first of all. You think about these Olympics, they're going through a lot of the same things, except they're pushing their bodies to an extreme, So when you see that, it's like what those people, I mean, they're stressing their bodies to incredible levels, really trying to get it but they need that base, that downtime. It's like what I describe it as like the space between the notes. You can like with music, you have a note and you have silence and you have a note. If you just have like constant notes, you're just going to have squelch. It's not going to be music. Those down periods really are important. And that period to kind of bring the body, I mean, you stress the body, in normal life. I mean, you can apply this not just to athletics, but in normal life, you stress the body. And then you need to have a time when the adrenals come back, everything recovers. You have that downtime, that silence, if you will. Then you hit another note. And if you're just constantly, hitting notes on a piano without any silence between, it's going to be a mess, and it's going to be a mess for your nervous system. I mean, this is kind of a big analogy, but it rings pretty true, and we are, constantly, our life has changed, probably more in the last 10, 15 years than it has, like from an evolutionary standpoint. I mean, we're constantly on gadgets and exposed to EMFs from your phones and Wi-Fi. And we have a 24-hour work cycle where people are constantly getting, having to respond to emails and that sort of thing. And there's just not that downtime anymore.
Yeah. That's huge.
HUSO was a way to, okay, let's go and let's develop a way that someone can, I mean, we have cords, we're not wireless. We use a very large waveform, which is more similar to the human voice. we use wires because we don't want to, we could do everything with Bluetooth, but that would just be another frequency.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to allow the person for 30 minutes to get in a position where they can, have a chair in their office or in their bedroom or whatnot, to just go in and have that 30 minutes, turn off their phone, put in airplane mode, take off the watches, take all that stuff, and really recalibrate their body.
I've found that to be phenomenally effective. I would like you to go into just a little bit more detail, because you mentioned it, but I don't think people are really getting it. So the sound is not digital, it's what?
Okay.
Go into that a little bit more and why that's
sure.
actually super important.
And it's an important part of what we do. Some people ask, is this binaural beats? Is this, and those are digitally produced frequencies. No, this is essentially the process. I'll kind of walk you through the process of how we develop our tones. We work with several people who have used their voice in healing in their practices, whether it be from a tradition of a Tibetan tradition or a Native American tradition, or even a Christian tradition. You have basically, if you go through any society or culture, they usually have a tradition of using their voice to either uplift or bring someone to a different state.
Yeah.
So our healers mostly come from Native American or Tibetan tradition. They go into the studio and say, if we're developing a program, like we have a program called Relief, and that program really helps with people who are suffering kind of from chronic inflammation and things like that. So we go in and we're like, okay, let's set the intent. This is the intent. This is the types of tones that we're looking for. So that person will go in the studio, set the intent for that, and then lay down a toning track. And toning's not necessarily singing, but it's having a very strong vocal response. So some of these things, when you listen to tones, they don't sound human at all, but they are. And then we go in and create harmonics to that tone so that it's more balanced for the body. We go in with an oscilloscope. We're looking for the certain wave pattern. And it's almost this beautiful pattern when it happens. And we're just like, okay, that's it. That's what we want. So we take that and we create a program for it. And in this case, it's Relief. It's composed of 3 tones. And then we deliver that sound in what's called lossless mode. So instead of an MP3 file, which is like ones and zeros, and it's cutting off part of the waveform, we have a WAV file, which is like a super huge file. And so then we do translate that WAV or wave file, if you want to call it. It's WAV, but some people say wave file, into a giant, what's called lossless file. So it's lossless sound. That is then converted to digital. It's digitized. But then we have a digital to analog converter. So we convert that back out to analog. So it's closer assimilating, the actual voice when you're hearing it. You're getting all the highs and lows in the complete waveform. So that waveform is not being cut.
Got it.
So that's kind of a long explanation about how the tones are a little bit different, but it is, complex. So we had to figure out, okay, how do we develop a digital to analog converter that can be small enough in the home unit? There were some embedded technology, basically programming that we had to do. Our circuit boards are actually made in Tasmania, of all places. So I was down in Tasmania about a month ago. We're working on some new capabilities, really, of a second generation unit now. Beautiful place, Tasmania, by the way. But it is a long way to go. But it's a great our guy who basically is our circuit board manufacturer moved his family from Colorado to Tasmania, and then worked out a deal with the Australian government to bring more high-tech industry to Tasmania, because before it was a lot of sheep farmers and things like that. But it's man, it's a beautiful place. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's south of Melbourne. It's off of the southern coast of Australia. Just a beautiful place. I was there for about a week. A lot of it was working in the lab and everything, but I did get some time to get out and do some trails out there, and kangaroos and wallabies, and it's just this amazing spot of the corner of the world. That's pretty cool.
As you're saying this, one thing I was reminded of is there's a scripture in Genesis where it says, "And God made man in his own image. But if you look at the Hebrew, what it says, and God made man a speaking spirit, just like God, is what it says.
Wow. I did not know. That's
And
awesome.
I'll give you a kind of an interesting story that I just thought of that you may enjoy from frequency and tone and everything. Try to do the condensed version of this. The way the individual cells in your body talk to each other is through a process of glycoproteins, or they take cell surface sugars, combine them in different shapes, attach it to a protein, and attach it to the surface of your cell, right? And I have some friends who've done a lot of research in this area, like a lot. And one of my friends once, he was doing a lecture, and he was kind of doing a little more complicated scientific lecture, and part of it was showing one of the sugars. It's a beta 1,4 polysaccharide, but it's a sugar that you can get from aloe. Is one of the places you can get it.
Okay.
And there was a gentleman sitting in the front row, and I think he had a yarmulke on or something. And when my friend posted this picture, the guy like freaked out. And after the lecture, he came up to my friend and he goes, are you saying that this is on the surface of all my cells? And my friend's like, yes. He goes, do you know that that is the exact symbol for the tetrahedrogrammaton? He's like, it's the Hebrew word for the name of God.
Wow. Wow.
And he goes, no, I didn't know that. He goes, so are you telling me that God signed his name on the surface of every single cell in my body? And he's like, did not know that. Now, here's the other very interesting thing that I think there was a guy named Hans. I'm a bit vague on the details. He put granules on the plate, and you can change the frequency it vibrates and changes all sorts of cool colors, right? Super cool. Well, this guy developed a way to, without any digitizing it, to use the human voice and to put the human voice on this plate. And nothing very interesting happened except when they used Hebrew or Sanskrit, which are both recognized as like sacred languages, right? And supposedly, and I never duplicated this, but supposedly what the Hebrew would do, it would often form the images of the Hebrew vowels itself.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
And so when you think about God, depending on your faith, if you think about God breathing life into Adam, however that really happened, it's like right onto the surface of all his cells, his own image and name.
Right.
But
that's incredible. Yeah.
So it's some trippy stuff. So
well, it comes down, to that, what we're seeing in the toning, like the intention, and when you look at an oscilloscope, when you look at that pattern of that track that's being laid down, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Exactly when you got it. It's like this, it's a really,
What is your thoughts? I've been hearing more people talking about how water is it's a perfect way to store information almost. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, the water, Dr. Emoto's work, the Japanese, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, sure.
The effect of intention on water molecules and their structure. Water is a very good carrier and holder of a medium through which frequency can be transmitted. In water itself, the molecules are affected by the resonance that you put into them.
Yeah.
So, I'm not really that versed in, I'm more familiar with Chinese herbs and that sort of thing. But when you treatment with and I'm just spacing out on the name, but it's been a long day. But as far as the homeopathics, there's 0.000% of this in this homeopathic, but yet it has a way of treating someone. And I've seen people get great results with homeopathics.
Oh yeah. I have one right in front of me. It's a homeopathic human growth hormone gel. Holy cow, does that stuff work?
Wow.
freaky effective results.
So that's it. I mean, technically, from a Western medicine standpoint, they can say, hey, there's nothing in there,
Yeah.
but obviously there's something affecting that.
The frequency of it.
The
Absolutely.
frequency of it.
Yeah. Very
and it's not
interesting.
enough to harm you with the poison, but it is enough to, like treats like. And I mean, I've met, several homeopathic practitioners who are great. They know exactly. That's not my area of expertise, but
Yeah.
I definitely, believe that it has, great results. And I think it's that, it's that. And I've seen just intention, in as an acupuncturist, and, intention is so important in treating a patient. If you're just kind of going through the motions and you're seeing somebody and you're just, okay, I'm just going to put in these needles and whatever, it's not as effective. I mean, you need to put, establish your intent. This is what I'm doing as a practitioner. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's the same with you when you're working with your clients and patients. You
Oh,
really
yeah.
set your intent.
I had this, I'll tell you this crazy story I had recently. I muscle test for a living, just a yes or no response energetically. And I was playing around with weight loss, and I was just kind of want to go, okay, what foods is my body uniquely like, and what should I avoid, right? So I'm just like, yes or no. And I kind of changed it to like, not just yes or no, but like, if it's a no, is it like an A, which is, yeah, it's fine. B, you should kind of avoid it. C is like, look, dude, just, you should not be eating that, right? And white rice for me, not a problem, right? So I go over to my sister's house one night for dinner. My nephew is incredible cook. Awesome. Very passionate guy, and doesn't pull back his words at all, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Good. It could be go other way, right?
No filter, just direct.
No filter, right? So I go over there, and he has a turkey gumbo and with white rice. I'm like, cool. Let's just muscle test the turkey gumbo. My body's like, good. The white rice, my body's like, no. I'm like, but like, I'm always test well for white rice. What's the deal? So I'm like, maybe he cooked it raw differently. I don't know. So I asked him, I go, Avi, how did you cook the rice? And he goes, oh, I just cooked it the normal way, but it turned out right. It's no good. I'm like, dude, you cursed my food. So I just took a step back and I go, with intention, I'm like, I bless this food in my body. And then I retest it. My body's like, oh, okay, you're good now. But I'm like, whoa, it was such a learning experience for me. Like, wow, that intention of like, it's like some serious business, right? And people toss around their intention and their words and their energy carelessly as if it has no impact. And it's like, oh, no, it does. So I have, I have a couple technical questions for you from some people who've been using it. And then I'd love to hear some of your favorite results you're seeing with the product. Okay.
For sure.
First of all, the pads. Okay. You got on the little cuffs, it says right and left, but it's not technically clear instructions on which one to put that on.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We put right and left just to make it simple, but all the pads are having the same, not the same as coming in the headphones. It's the same oscillation, but it's formulated a little bit differently so that it goes to the pad. Like if you listen to, if that pad you were listening to, it wouldn't sound great, but it's designed, there's a factory grown quartz crystal in there, which holds that.
So don't worry about the right and left. Just put the pads on, put them on your ankle, go for it. Okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. Second question for you. I often, a lot of my clients and a lot of my practitioners, friends who are also practitioners, that we're dealing with a lot of people who's, not just issues with their vagus, but I would call it a polyvagal syndrome, to the degree to which their vagus gets so whacked that it will interpret any message of safety as danger. Does that make sense? Like,
yes,
to an extreme degree.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for some of these people who are so freaked out that you got to start baby steps? How can they do this?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I kind of basically, they fall into a couple of different categories. One are kind of relaxation resistant patients. And these are usually type A people who have got a lot of balls in the air all the time for several years going, and it's taxing. And they feel like if they relax, if they go into a more parasympathetic, all the balls are going to drop and their whole life's going to fall apart. So it's just like, it's like their instinct is no, I can't,
Yeah.
because everything's
Safe is not safe. Don't even discuss it, or
even
else
go there. I've just got to stay on alert, you know?
Yeah.
And so they have a really kind of a resistant time at first, you know, like that, making that transition. A program like Calm is kind of like a hammer, and it can like just like start, and then if they're fighting it, it can be like kind of hard. So what I usually say with those types of patients is to start with a program like Relax, which is a little more gentle.
Yeah.
And to start with the pad volumes and the headphone volume very low,
Yeah.
and just let the body, instead of pushing forward those tones, instead of, or pushing forward towards the patient, they're just gently there, and they allow the patient kind of to come into them.
Yeah.
You know, so to really kind of ease back is, you know, more is not necessarily better with like pad volume. And even if you can barely feel the pads, you're still getting that resonance. So, you know, it's like really ease that back.
I had one client, I finally had to tell him, like, look, she's so freaked out about even trying the machine. I'm like, just turn the machine on. Don't even attach it yourself. Just sit over there, turn it on, and you can hear it a bit. And just, like, that's like to an extreme degree. Just, it's on, so it's not hurting you. It's okay. Nothing's bad's going to happen. Try it maybe without headphones, you know, just like, you know, so, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been telling people, is just really ease into it. So
another thing that, you know, if they are having a problem, you know, you could basically with them, you know, I'm not sure how you're doing your muscle testing, or I don't know if you physically have to be with them, or if you can do muscle testing from, you know, remotely, but
I do it all remote.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you could, you know, walk through some programs definitely with them that, you know, might be, or have them just listen just with the headphones, just to like a small segment of it, and then see how they're going. You know, Relax is actually, that's the one that is more gentle form. Relief is actually pretty good too. That's the one that's for inflammation, but it's also good for, I've had a lot of people who, you know, have practiced many years of meditation, and that's one of their favorites, is the Relief, which is pretty good. I think we're all dealing with inflammation anyway, but
so here's a couple questions for you. I've been finding people getting really interesting results, like listening to it and maybe taking their wrists and putting their wrists on their gut, you know,
for sure,
and seeing some really good results. I actually had a really interesting experience the other day. I had a very sore throat, like the kind of sore throat you're like, holy crap, like what am I fighting here type of thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it may have been relief or something, but what I did is I put the pads right on my neck, and 30 minutes later, my sore throat was like,
wow, cool,
gone, like gone. I did it for my mother-in-law, and she goes, her hip pain was 75% gone in 30 minutes.
Okay. That's awesome. I've seen, you know, and that, as an acupuncturist, I do that. Like sometimes, for example, I was at the Ironman, and I had a guy coming through the Expo Village in Hawaii, and he kind of was there. One of his, I think his daughter or something was doing the race, and he had this terrible sciatic pain. He could barely walk. And so he just basically came over to the tent just to kind of like try to lean against the table. And I was like, wow, you know. And so what I did is I had him put the wrist, I had him put the stand area, put the wristbands on. I took the pads that would normally be on the ankles and just put them on the sciatic area, back on the hip, and ran him for like 30 minutes. And he was able to actually walk out of there. He's like, this is incredible. You know, it was like an acupuncture treatment.
Boom. Very cool.
You know, so that boom, you know, we had another,
do you ever tape the pads with some sort of athletic type tape to specific areas for people?
You could do that. We have these kind of in the Pro unit, we have 2 floating pads. So we have both, you know, wrists and ankles, and we have floating pads that you can then,
okay.
You have, but like that, what I do is, sometimes if the sock is loose, like if it's like a Achilles or a calf problem, I can just tuck the pad back in there. We have these kind of weighted bean bags, I guess for a better word, which can actually hold the pad down. A little bit of athletic tape would work as well, as long as it's not on the, you know, the fabric of the pad, because the pad slides out of the wristband, but you could probably on the cord just attach a little bit of athletic tape.
So attach to the cord, not to the surface of the pad itself.
Not to the surface of the pad itself. You just don't, if you compress the pad too much, the oscillation will be, restricted somewhat. So
Okay, that makes sense. So it can't be like this. Has to have some room to.
Yeah, it has
Okay,
to
that
have
makes
some room.
sense.
So that's another thing. Like with someone that has rather large or larger ankles, if that pad is getting stretched out too much, that may be another way to do is just put a little bit of athletic tape or tuck it into a sock. It's important the pads, how they're designed, are they go on the medial side. That's the inside of the leg, above the ankle bone, about a hand length above the ankle bone. So if you put your hand like right at the border, the top border of the ankle bone on the inside of the leg, then it goes up right at the border of the tibia. And that's a actual acupuncture point called spleen 6. And the interesting thing about that point is that it's a crossing point of the channels of the liver, spleen, and kidney. It's called the 3 yin crossing point. And it's an incredibly powerful point in acupuncture. And it's a point that we found with the sound is most appropriate for the legs. And the part on the wrist that you do is about 2 finger lengths in from the crease of the, if you have the crease of the wrist, you're
so like right there, and
in between those 2 tendons, you can see tendons right in the middle of the wrist. That's pericardium 6. And that's really gateway to the heart, really, and treating the heart and heart issues and just opening up a person.
Yeah.
So,
I heard someone say something interesting once, and I've been doing work on my clients lately with it, and it's been really working. He said, it was actually Joe Dispenza. I saw him, if you know who that is. And he said, the amygdala is the seat, is a source of anxiety. He goes, but your heart will heal your amygdala. And I'm like, interesting. So, I have a lot of people with chronic anxiety. So you muscle test what's the functionality of your amygdala, and then what can we do to change it? And a lot of times you'll see a lot of heart issues, and it'll bring their anxiety or their predisposition to jump into anxiety, really reduce that quite a bit. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of plasticity too in the brain. You can, there's kind of a battles I understand between the hippocampus and the amygdala, but those can change, you're not just like locked into a position where once you get this, those can be altered. And I do think that the Shin, which is the Chinese attribute, Shin is kind of your emotional, kind of spiritual, emotional body, is embodied in the heart, so that Shin gate, now we're getting kind of into Chinese theory, but, whenever you're talking, whether you're talking it through, looking at it from a Chinese perspective, once you get towards the truth or things that happen, it's just described in different ways, whether Hebrew or in Chinese, or, if people are really observant and they see, if they're looking at the body on different levels, spiritual, physical, emotional levels, seeing how it relates to our environment, which it does, and really being observant about that and seeing how change comes about in the body. But those are really important aspects. So we've chosen those points, as kind of the standard gate points for putting those points on. They're also yin points, which is sound is kind of a yang, if you're looking at yin and yang, yin is kind of a more of a earth grounded, yang is more energetic. Well, sound is a yang, just in its nature, it is yang. So those yin channels are better receptors for a yang treatment like that.
Okay. Interesting.
But in pain, with someone with pain, there's a chi cleft point, which is on a yang meridian, which is on the outside, actually on the other side, like from where spleen 6 is on the ankle. If you go just on the other side, so the outside of the shin, the top of the shin, there's a chi cleft point, which I've also used pads on for acute pain, and that can work.
Yeah. In fact, I think, let's do this because I'm curious as to exactly where that is. Let me pull up something real quick here. Would it be, isn't it extraordinary meridian or a main meridian?
It's a meridian. It's GB39 is where that point is.
So let me do this because I can share this here and we'll look at this.
Get an acupuncture chart there.
Yeah. So this is, actually we go back out one, maybe two.
Yes, you can look.
Where would that be?
So just in the 12 meridians, just go to the 12.
Go back to the 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
got to the 12 meridians there, and then go to the gallbladder.
Let's see. Where is that?
Leg.
Tau, kidney, liver. Oh, here we go. That one.
Mm-hmm. So it's about like right there. Yep, exactly.
Right there. So, and you say that's a good one for pain in general?
One for acute pain. Yeah, it's a GB39. Okay. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very cool. Any other cool insights on people hacking stuff?
Look at the Thai yin. Okay, let's go to the kidney meridian of or actually let's go to the spleen meridian.
Here, this one? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you're seeing right up above the ankle, that is, keep going up a little bit more. No, down, about, just about right. A little bit lower is where spleen 6 is. Yeah, a little bit up, just above this is where the ankle band will go there. And so all the basically yin meridians, the kidney as well, come through that spot. And then what you have is you have an oscillation. So this is how the Chinese saw the energy went through the body. But really what you're having is there's a biochemical reaction happening if you put in an acupuncture needle, where you get a biochemical reaction. You get micro trauma, and that creates a biochemical reaction. But you're also activating that point for an energetic to be flowing through that. And there's a lot of piezoelectrics and things like that are happening on intercellular communication. But when you're using sound, you're using that whole fascial sheath, which is fascia is like, a very small film. It's like, well, I don't want to be, but when you have a chicken and you're preparing a chicken, it's that really white film that goes all over everything. It's
just kind of connects everything.
Connects everything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of silica in the body too. And silica is a great conductor of frequency. Okay. And so by putting the pad on there, instead of having that micro trauma with a little acupuncture needle, now you're injecting sound to that point. And the sound is traveling along the fascia up, and then it comes in and starts to trigger the vagus nerve, which is on the back, of this, in the central nervous system.
Yeah.
Autonomic nervous system. So you're able to then create a shift in that. But there's also a lot of things going on a cellular level that I'd love to be able to and planning on, because my background's in research, to see where, at what point does intercellular communication get balanced? What does frequency do to the intercellular communication? At a certain point, sound and light become one. So the cells are communicating through light at a certain point as well. Yeah. And so, and coming into those signaling and kind of the imprint on cells that we were talking about with Hebrew, there's so much subtle kind of intercellular communication there.
Oh yeah. I would imagine you get some extraordinary results with people with autoimmune disorders. One thing I've been doing lately, which has been very interesting, is, we talked about this glycosylation, these sugars attached to proteins attached to the surface of the wall. And, with people with autoimmune disorders, that's really breaks down, and there's a lot of very poor communication going on. And one thing I started doing is I would muscle test with people what the percentage of proper glycosylation is in their body, and then do sessions with them and then see that number come up. And for example, if I'm working with someone doing multiple sessions and at the beginning of the next session, we test that and it's much better than it was before, often I'll say to them, how are you doing? And they're like, oh yeah, actually I'm a lot less pain and different things like that. But I would think that also the frequency of the machine could also really impact that as well, because it's typically a safety issue for those people. Almost everyone I deal with autoimmune disorders, they're the type A person, and then they hit a life event, boom, and they didn't have the margins for it, and then
right.
And if you could take someone like that and use the HUSO machine to put margins in their life, even though they haven't really changed how they approach life, and that it should do that too, but sometimes they're not going to. Right. Then I would think that as they go through life and they experience these life events, they've got the cushion to handle it, instead of a life event becoming a spectacular meltdown, right?
pushing them over that edge. Yeah, I know. I mean, I've had experience with that too. I mean, and it's just the margin of error. It gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And then there's one little thing that can trigger it and the body just can't handle anymore. And it trips the body's own immune system to start attacking itself. I've had instances where had patients with autoimmune disease, really bad rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. They do something simple as removing the mercury fillings in their mouth. And all of a sudden they notice, well, I'm starting to get like improvement. Why is that? Because it just, it was that was just one stressor. It was like that line was so thin.
Yeah.
By taking out the mercury fillings, they might have not been the main cause, but it was just something that was another stressor in their body. So by just they've pushed it so far, they're just right on the razor's edge,
I'll tell you one other way I think this machine will be very helpful too is typically I find people with autoimmune disorders, the source of their problem is they attach their value and identity to their performance, right? So what it does is they can't ever stop. They always have to keep going. And most of these people aren't really bummed that they're in pain or have an autoimmune disorder. What they're really bummed about is that they can't perform well anymore, but they can't be as productive. And if their value is connected to that, it's like you're drowning their identity. And the problem with all these people is they'll do a lot of things holistically to get some energy back, but they've never changed the I can rest message. So as soon as they get energy back, they go to start working hard again. And so they get in this circular thing and they'll never get off that treadmill until they can wake up morning and be totally relaxed and not have the need to go scrub the kitchen floor or something stupid, right? It's like, and if they can do that, and this is what I really see the machine doing is really like, just let go of letting go of just let it go. And you're like, okay, it's all good. And you're not anymore. And then your body can actually fix itself,
Right. Yeah. So, and it's not something that it's, and I've seen it over and over again where someone runs on it. It's just like, whoa, it's amazing. It was like somebody flicked the switch.
Oh yeah.
You can tell yourself all day, relax. Why am I so stressed? But then that's another mental cycle.
Yeah.
But, by running on HUSO, it's really a place where, it takes you to a deeply meditative state. And that access to the vagus nerve, that access that brings you back towards a parasympathetic state is not something that necessarily happens psychologically. It's not in the mind. This is actually a full body reset, where you are quite literally flipping a switch, and it can be that drastic for someone. Like, wow.
I'll give you a fascinating example. So, like my one of the things I've loved about the machine is like, I do so many sessions for every day, but I've got 3 teenagers. They're all stressed out a bit. And then I get guilty. I'm like, I should do work on my kids too. And like, there's this burden of, I should be helping these people all the time. And now I have the machine. I'm just like, hook yourself up to the machine. Right. And like my oldest son, who's highly intuitive and empathetic, used the machine once and he's just moved to New York. He goes, I'm stealing that thing when I moved to New York. It was so like for him. My oldest daughter, very smart, very intense, gorgeous girl. I married very well, so I've got beautiful kids. But this is the interesting thing she says. She goes, Dad, the machine is the on-off switch for my brain. She goes, I can tell instantly in my complexion when I use the machine. She goes, I put it on my guts. I can feel a change in my gut. She goes, but the real interesting thing is that it's almost a problem. She goes, my energy, she's very perceptive. She goes, my energy is so much different and relaxed that when she's going to community college, she goes, when I go to school, all of a sudden now everyone wants to talk to me. All of a sudden the change in the amount of boys who are interested in her, 180 degrees different. Because she's the same attractiveness, but there's a big difference between being calm and being scary, right?
Right, yeah.
And she goes,
Exactly.
it's almost a problem. She goes, I'm not getting any homework done there anymore at school because everyone wants to socialize now because I must seem friendly or something. I'm like, maybe it's okay, right? Don't worry
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
What are some of your, let me ask you this. This is what I'm curious about. I'm sure you had an understanding of what the machine might be able to do, right? What are some
Right.
of the things that totally surprised you? Like you're like, holy crap, I had no idea it would do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot, and this is all anecdotal, of course. We
Sure.
can't, make, this is what people are reporting in the field. I mean, we've had great results with kids with ADHD, like that cannot, in normal circumstances, can't sit still at all and do anything. Where usually the parents have gotten HUSO and the kids think it's really cool because it's got headphones and things. They want to try it. And then also you're here for a full 30-minute program and they've never seen their kids actually sit still, and they like it. We've, had great success with people who aren't sleeping well, who can, and they don't necessarily have to run on HUSO right before bed. It can be something that they hit that reset.
I've noticed that myself. Not just sleeping well, but getting up easier, which is an indication I was actually totally in deep rest and relaxation. By the way, everyone watching this, the place you burn fat is in delta. If you can get rid of the cortisol before you go to bed and really sleep well, it'll help a lot with losing weight, just so you know.
Absolutely. Deep in delta. And we've seen that. I don't know if you're familiar with HeartQuest and different heart rate variability.
I'm familiar with the Heart Math Institute. Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of thing. But we've run patients before and after when they're running, and it does show a deeply
I've actually done that myself. I've got the Elite HRV app on my phone, and I can connect it to my heart rate monitor. Because I was curious, I'm like, that's one way, because I muscle test a lot, but you're always like, it is muscle. I could be totally wrong. I always like to get additional data. And the additional data I get is like morning blood glucose levels.
Okay.
You reduce the cortisol, those numbers are lower and healthier in the morning. But also I've done it a couple times on my heart rate variability test where it will tell you, oh, you are in sympathetic or parasympathetic. I'm sure your son being a big cyclist, it's always monitoring. Hey, have you actually recovered from your ride yesterday?
It is, and I was just working with athletes in Dallas last 3 days where, heart rate variability is a really good or omega wave and different ways to measure where is the athlete at that point? How much training load can they handle? Coaches, that's really ideal information. How is an athlete responding to not only the load, but are they, setting themselves up for injury if it's too late? And you can use heart rate variability for that. And what we send with HUSO is immediately after there's usually, and this is typical for how heart rate variabilities work, there's a decrease in that heart rate variability. And then there's a spike up. So
interesting. How long is that usually?
Usually within 24 hours, you have it coming back up, but that's pretty typical of a treatment that's actually going to have a positive effect on heart rate variability. It's not just like you give the treatment and the heart rate variability, comes up. The idea is a higher.
So someone is having issues really relaxing and they're like, that machine stresses me out a bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If they're very intuitive and perceptive, it's like it's pushed you a bit, give it some time, you'll recover and be better than before. Okay. That's good feedback.
That said, if you have this is coming back, if a program is not, if you're fighting that program, don't continue to fight that. Find another program. Your people are generally pretty intuitive. So if they're feeling like, hey, this is just not, this particular program that I'm running this is not what I need, they need to pay attention to that. Or like we said before, if they're really relaxation, reduce those volumes, let the body come into it and then assimilate it better. What we've seen, working with athletes, even my son, for example, he's a type who is, super. He actually won the collegiate, the Southeastern Regional Championships as a freshman. He had cycled when we were in France. He'd cycled for Marseille, he's had a lot of experience. Done Paris-Roubaix junior level, but his big thing is before an event, his adrenals are all firing. He's got to, go to the bathroom, porta potty, 500, all the
Oh
time.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
my bike, it's like, well, it's 3 minutes before the race. So I got to go, because,
I understand a bit of that. Yeah.
And
I had friends in college who were one of my friends, #1 collegiate cyclists 2 years in a row for UC Davis. Had friends who, I had one friend who was actually a coach for a guy who won the Tour de France one year. Friend of mine from UC Davis. But yeah, awesome. Cyclists get really wired up and they're probably the most data-driven athletes out there almost, I think, by wattage and this and heart rate and just like down to the
for sure, very
tiny details. Yeah,
because it's they're so on the it's maybe they're all at a really good high level, but it's that what really distinguishes the person who's going to win is very small margin.
Oh yeah, like Laurent Fignon, because he didn't wear an Aero helmet, he lost the Tour de France.
Exactly. The French are always going to tell you that. Yeah, Greg LeMond won that year in a time trial, and Greg LeMond also used profile those Aero bars.
Yeah.
So the French, who are traditionalists by nature, were scoffing at it and it was the last day of the Tour de France, and Laurent Fignon was in the yellow jersey, and Greg LeMond ended up winning. And so it was this.
The tiniest of margins. So does your son see a change? Does he use the machine right before?
He does. In fact, I'm looking for, I'll have to show you from my phone, but we were just so he sets up usually, and I take a kind of a battery. That's a little bit, I take a battery out and, he has his bike. This is right before he's starting to do the warm up and get ready for a crit.
Yeah.
And he, runs on HUSO for usually I do a program for about, abbreviated program for like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
He started to really run on focus and or clarity right before the event. And it'll really help him kind of not only calm down, but be, more mentally sharp, reading the race. And he's had some really good results. He, especially in like criteriums.
Yeah,
are super stressful.
That brings up a very interesting question for you. So I'm always biohacking myself constantly and muscle testing a lot of things. And I'll be 50 this summer. And so one thing I'm interested in is like testosterone levels, right? Like what can I do? Because I'm trying to get fit and in shape, and that's super important. And the other day I was like, is there a program that would help with that? And the program that came up was Focus. Would there be any reason for Focus increasing testosterone levels that you can think of? I mean, I looked at it, I haven't done it yet, but I'm like, how interesting.
Well, the tones, although they do put you in a more relaxed state, that is a more yang tone for sure.
Interesting.
The it's all voice, so there are all those harmonics. So it's not just a particular frequency level. I can say, it's like, 300 or 500 or 600 hertz or whatever.
Yeah.
But Focus in general is a more yang program for sure.
Got it.
And you can tell. I mean, it's there's programs that are more grounding, like Ground, and those are all great. But the programs like Focus and particularly Clarity are more yang programs. And so absolutely, now whether that for you would help to boost your endogenous testosterone, that's quite possible. It'd be really interesting if you could test that.
I will. Yeah, I'll try and play around with that and see. But that'd be interesting to do. One thing I do, I know a lot of people would be watching this who do know how to muscle test. And I'll tell you one thing I personally do, because I find it interesting. So I'll go, if I muscle test, what's the best program for me? Might be Relax. If I change the testing, you go, if I release some energetic things first, then what will be the best program? And often it will switch. So I'll have to do some energetic work on myself. And then I'm more receptive to like maybe an Expand, something that's a little more of a trip,
Yeah,
which that one is. The Expands. Tell me a bit about that program, because that was I had the most interesting experience. Was it Expand or Expanse, or what's it called?
Expand. Yeah.
Expand. I did that. After the first time I did that, it was trippy. It felt like, the only way I could describe it, it felt like my hard drive got wiped clean. Not in a bad way, but like of just poof.
Yeah. It's very, expand is one of our higher kind of frequency, more lifting.
Yeah.
Definitely, the opposite of expand, if I would say, I hate to speak in generalizations, but ground is like that. So
Yeah.
for example, I have, one of the HUSO family, person who has HUSO, we call them the HUSO family, people who have the HUSO units out in the field. She's very into meditation and came to HUSO kind of through, using it as a tool for her meditation practice that she uses. And she found it's like, normally she will just go with meditation and be off, like out of her body, kind of experience feeling like that. Yeah, I mean, you can never quiet the mind totally. You're kind of on the bank and you're watching hearing the river go by, but but with ground, she just couldn't do that. It was like she was in that state, but she felt like she was locked. She was trying to go to those places, and ground it really is anchoring, it's
interesting.
And with expand, it's just like, bam, she's like,
she's out of here. Poof, going on a trip. Yeah, that was kind of like, that's what I felt like. Here's a question for you. If someone knows the power of meditation and visualizing because they're trying to actually create something, is there a particular program that would lend itself to doing that better?
To manifesting something.
Yeah, to manifesting something.
I almost want to say comfort for some reason. That just kind of came out because comfort is like, if you're wanting something, it's almost like you want, I don't know if people like to manifest things that are comfortable for them in one way or another, whether it's money or this or the other.
Interesting.
But, that kind of came out as, maybe comfort. Focus would be a good one for manifestation. Especially if you
need more zeal you need to get off your butt and go kick some butt and do some things with your life.
And you need to be organized about it, because with focus, it lets you really, it's focus, but it's also, you can see a lot clearer. So I have, in New York, we have a couple executives that are using HUSO, and, as a negotiation tool. They're doing it before they go into negotiations.
Yeah,
and things like that.
Have that extra edge for their $1 billion deals.
I didn't know that I didn't necessarily think of it that way, but if I can see how it.
Well, here's the interesting thing. We get back to my question on the testosterone. Have you ever seen the TED Talk on the Superwoman pose?
I haven't.
Really fascinating. So what they found is if someone will stand like Superman or Superwoman for 2 minutes, your testosterone goes up and your cortisol drops. Now, the interesting thing they said about this too is they go, what we found is that people do that and that hormone level changes, that people will receive them differently. He goes, all of a sudden people will more likely to hire you, buy from you, have a relationship with you, because energetically people love the higher testosterone, lower cortisol. I'm confident and calm.
Right.
And that creates an environment that other people will relax and let you be in charge of it. And I'm like, So maybe that's correlates also a little more with increasing those type of hormone levels in someone's body. So.
Yeah, for sure. And, I would think that definitely focus and clarity would do that for someone. They're more intense programs though, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great for going into a bike race or a foot. Derek Morgan, who is an outside linebacker of the Tennessee Titans, he was one of the first kind of athletes to discover our technology. He went to a wellness center. There was a professional unit there. He's like, wow, this is great. And then he got a home unit and, was using it to relax, but then he's like, I'm going to use focus and clarity before a game. So he started using actually focus and clarity before the game and then doing like relax or calm afterwards, but for him, he described it as, the game slowed down. He could better read the field. He also had some kind of ADHD issues, which isn't uncommon for football players and things like that. It's just, but out on the field, you're in sympathetic tunnel vision mode. It's battle, but you really have to be more open. You have to almost fight that nature to be able to read the field. I mean, you've got a lot.
Seem to be more creative instead of this to be like this, and seeing your peripheral vision,
right,
to solve things. Interesting.
it's not going out and chasing butterflies, but it's like, okay, I see all that and I'm
See everything.
yeah, exactly. And this is exactly
How
what I do.
interesting.
I wish I had this when I was when my kids were younger. I was a soccer coach, and you had this incredibly talented kid on the team, but he was like, oh, there's a butterfly. I'm going to go chase it.
The squirrel brain,
I was like, dude, concentrate.
Focus. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But he's extremely talented, but just sometimes he'd be like off. You're like, whoa, where are you going?
Well, this has such a potential for high level entrepreneurs because so many of them are manic depressive, bipolar, ADHD, like
Absolutely.
operating that level. Real question for you. Have you got any golfers on it yet?
We do have, don't really want to mention his name yet, but there is a professional golfer on the circuit that does have HUSO. Just took it on the circuit.
Yeah, interesting.
The last, 5-6 weeks has had it. And so
any feedback from him yet?
Good. Yeah. Very good. So,
cause that talk about like you lose your mental edge a bit and like things go to crap and like 3 holes, you just lost $3 million, like, whew,
such a fine line. And there's it's like they groove their swing and it's going well. And then just a little bit can just, and it's gone.
Yeah, very interesting. And golfers will pay anything to improve their stroke one.
Definitely. It's
those in the triathletes, I had a friend who he was a triathlete. He goes, I used to work at this bike shop in San Diego. And he goes, I'd sell $500 titanium boat kits all day long because I just tell people, oh, it'll take 20 seconds off your 30K time trial. And people are like, okay,
oh yeah,
I'll buy it. So awesome. Well, any last things you'd like to convey to the people watching this? I really appreciated your time. It's been huge for my family. I'd like to add one thing that's kind of unique to my experience, just for your information and for everyone else watching. What I personally found is that, so I would have some people come over to my house and I'd hook them up to the machine. And I always I muscle test a ridiculous amount of stuff, but I will want to know quantitatively what's going on for these people. And this is not like blood tests or any hard data, but so I'd muscle test people on, before you do it, how was your immune system, nervous system, what are the percentage of glycosylation and digestion? Always those numbers, right? And it was really, and the vagus, really interesting how much those would improve for people just in 20, 30 minutes. The real interesting thing was for me personally, I test that number over and over and over. And so what I found is that the benefit was compounding a little bit, next session a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Till for me personally, if I do it consistently, all those numbers are like 100, 110%, 130% of normal, right? Just like, and so I'm world class at what I do, and I train people all over the world to do what I do. But combining what I do for myself and the machine, I could get results that I could not get on my own through. And I've spent like $1,000 on brain entrainment audios and all sorts of stuff. But that machine, from what my quantitative analysis, would do better than I can do personally on myself. And really with much less effort too, is really the impressive thing. So.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, that's, it is cumulative, what we have. That said, you don't need to overdo it. You don't need to run, some people, it's good to run just a couple times a week, because it is like a cumulative thing. You don't necessarily, if once is better, can I do 5 times a day? I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
Let your body knows what to do. It takes this sound, which is a very ancient technology, healing tech, I guess, if you will, an ancient healing modality. Let's put it that way. We brought a very modern spin on it, but we're familiar. It's human voice. It's the first thing you hear. I mean, before you're even born in your mother's womb, you respond well to that. And and these tones are balancing. So, and it's one part, like you say, it's one part to get you in a better place where you're body is naturally resting, healing, producing the neurotransmitters it needs to be, works really good. Then you're in a more receptive place for other types of therapies, other types of, even if you want to on your own meditate and things like that. You know, we're not the only thing, the only answer, but definitely if we can help, you know, people out, you know, in just daily life, which is quite hectic these days, get to that balance, that HUSO reset, if you will, and then up their game, you know, in that way. And it's not a real pressure up their game. It's just like, hey, it's like that thing you said, I'm confident, but I'm relaxed, and and you know, just be the warrior you're meant to be and going into the world.
Love it. I love that the activation energy to do is very low. That it's like, look, sit down and press play. How hard can that be? And the impact, you know, and the synergistic impact with everything else you're doing therapy wise, you know, I think it reduced people's need for supplements and chiropractic care and everything. Save, you know, when I look at this, I go, if someone understands what this will do, it will save them money big time over a period of time, for sure. No question, in my opinion. So anyways.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it's great, Stephen, talking with you.
I appreciate your time. Maybe we'll get to meet you sometime. I'm just trying to get back into cycling shape. So
great.
Come out.
I was going to touch base. My son was really small. We did the Live Strong challenge in Austin. He was about 9. We did the ride. We ran the 5 the day before, then went out and rode. Beautiful, beautiful city, Austin.
Oh yeah. Love this town. I came into town briefly once and I'm like, I think these are my people, and I moved here. So,
does it still keep Austin weird? Is that the kind of the?
Oh yeah, you know, well, it's the joke is Austin is more technically surrounded by Texas,
right?
It's like a little kind of hippie bubble.
Kind of reminds me of Nashville too. I mean, it's cool with the music scene there.
Yeah,
awesome. So cool. Maybe we'll get together on a bike ride and definitely, we can definitely follow up, you know, with another podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to do that and love to dig a little bit more into it. I think people will really enjoy it. So awesome. For sure. I appreciate your time.
Great chatting with you.